Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay, well, welcome. Today is sort of a special day. First of all, we have Congressman Paul Gosar is going to give us a nice to know, good to know, and who cares on environment, regulations, legislation, and how we can advance the opportunities for our industry. Second of all, today is Arizona's birthday, and we have with us Senator Gowan. I was going to ask you to just open your mouth and say hello, but you're busy. So we've got it's going to be a nice agenda. Today we're going to focus on mining. We're not going to get into the other political issues. It's just not our format, and it's not what we do. The other part of this whole opportunity is for you all to get better acquainted with each other, and also to understand industry-wide what we're doing is, I was just speaking with Nancy and what the other industries are doing. And so we at SABC, we have uploaded a brand new website, not a brand new website, but an updated website with a calendar. And we are going to post for all the organizations, Mining Foundation, SME, Lowell Institute, all the different organizations, so that we all have a place to go in case you don't have a direct link with some of the other organizations. We also have our coalition partners, our career opportunities, jobs opportunities coming up with the various projects, and you can read the rest on your own. The most important part of this is by us staying informed and sharing our message with each other, but not just each other, with our family and friends. That is what's going to make our industry much more, what's the word I'm looking for, attractive for people that are not involved in our industry. You know, we're good at talking to each other, but we need to do a better job of talking to the people that are not familiar with us. It's part of our education outreach program that the Mining Foundation of the Southwest is doing. AMA is working on an education outreach program. And the more we get people to understand what this industry does, the less pushback we're going to get from those that don't agree with us. So we're going to start off today with our good friend from the state legislature. I always call her Senator, but it's actually Representative now, Gail Griffin. Gail.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. I'm not going to go into any particular bills, but we've probably, every session we have probably 12 or 1,300 bills. I think we're pushing 1,700 this year. A lot of bad stuff, a lot of gun regulation, a lot of things that we don't like. But I did want to tell you a story. I do have a resolution in support of mining and all the important items that mining and lives that we address, cell phones with the kids and all the things that they do, and they're all driving cars. So the union showed up in committee and wanted, actually pretty much demanded that we added certain things in there. And so we let them know that they don't dictate salaries and benefits, and this is a bill in support of mining. And so there were a couple on the committee that were not in support unless that was added. So we had a little get-together saying, go ahead and vote no on it. We're going to put it on the board. People are going to see whether you support or don't support mining. And take that back to your caucus. Well, it passed out of the House 60-0. So it's really important. These issues that we're all here, they're jobs, it's the economy. It doesn't make any difference what side of the aisle you're on or shouldn't when we're talking about natural resource industry. So phone calls on these particular issues. We're addressing a lot of water issues. We're talking about Arizona Geological Survey, since it's over at the U of A, what do we do? And so we are addressing many of the issues. Next week is the last week to get the House bills out of the House and the Senate bills out of the Senate so that we cross them over and we address them in the other body. So we're working on the budget. We continue fighting for jobs in the economy and what's best for Arizona. And I thank you all for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Do you want to take a couple questions? Is there any questions? You got out of here easy.
Yeah.
Huh? Yeah. Before we introduce Congressman Gosar, for those of you that haven't seen our YouTube channel, we have been producing videos on a Miracle for Mining campaign, and the goal is to raise a significant amount of money so we can do television advertising we're going to start in the Florence, Tucson, Globe, Superior region, and then expand it to the other mining regions so that we can understand, so people can get a better idea of what we do. So right now we're going to play our latest video that was literally finished up this morning, and don't be confused by the voice.
Why is mining so important? Simply put, it's the foundation of everything that defines a society. Everything you see, everything you touch is a product of mining. Since the beginning of time, the advancement of every civilization depended on their ability to process minerals from the earth. No matter when, no matter how, no matter why, every society on this planet has developed, grown, and modernized based solely on the minerals it could process. That, my friend, is why mining is so important.
I can't see that far away.
Mr. Gowan would like to say.
Senator Gowan, would you like to come up and say hello to us? I had to walk into his office and ask him personally the other day because his phone doesn't quit ringing. And you have mute on that?
Yeah. Unlike the Congressman where he has 1,000 staffers, you know, I get one. Oh, that's right, only 500 for you guys. Congressman and I go back a long way. He's a good friend, and he's a good friend to us out in the West and mining for certain, and I'm glad you're here. Appreciate you. Is that better? Sorry. Get it right here. Well, I appreciate you guys inviting us over, talk with you, and come and see what you have on the plate today. We have, what did I say, 1,581 bills. 1,581 bills that are at the legislature right now. I had checked because Gail had asked. So that's a lot of bills. They're all not going to become law. Don't worry. The traditional is between 2 and 250. Is that what they are? Yeah. Become law? Okay, good. 250 and 300, she says. So we're pretty close. So we get a lot of bills, but we don't have a lot of hearings. So, you know, a chairman, how powerful a chairman is, you can imagine how powerful the speaker and the president are. They're the ones that put the bills into committees. So they're the ones that decide where they go. But how powerful they are is they don't have to decide if they don't wish to. By rule, you have to place them in a committee. That's what both houses have that. But they can always put it in committee after committees are finished hearing. So they still go into committee. So that's the trick of the trade for that thing. How powerful a chairman is once it's received. So I'm the appropriations chairman. So if I receive a bill, I can always just take that and shove it in a drawer. And it doesn't have to come out, and I've killed the bill effectively that way. So it really depends on what we want to hear and how we believe our committee is going to take that message of whatever those bills are. I have a bill that we're placing in that will be very important to all of you guys here. It's called the permitting bill. President Trump has pushed this one forward, and this actually comes from him. Alex Hergott, one of his directors, is leading this with me, and we have buy-in from the governor, and also we've had private sector come in with the directorships to actually lay out a pathway to where we have it on a computer screen, right? We go into a website and actually create it so when you have a project that you'll be developing, say we do I-11. You guys like I-11? Yeah, look at that. Do the aggregates all around. Be a lot of money put through the state, right? So if you did that, all the projects that it needs for the federal side, it already has a website for that. There's a portal for that already. And that's what we're trying to mirror here in this state, is to mirror that at a state level. So any of the departments that you have to take part with and they regulate you in that aspect, they have to put it on this portal and give a time frame by law of what the time frames are, and all of the permitting that you would need to have will be displayed on there so nothing gets lost. So the time frame at the federal level cuts it by 2 years off of permitting and such. So what we're hoping is here, we're already pretty fast. We are. But you never know who's in the future, right? Who's going to be in the future here. So we want to make sure that we have something there to shine the light on any bureaucracy that might hold things up. That's the whole purpose of this, is to make sure that government can move at the speed of business. Wouldn't that be nice? So that's the whole purpose and issue. This will happen. We're going to have this. It's coming through my committee, not next week, but the following week. And since it's my bill, I know it'll be heard. Bill number. Really? Oh, my. I don't know. It's there. She'll look it up for me. See, I don't have my staffer next to me like the Congressman so that they can tell me in my ear which one it is. But I get help from Sydney, right? So that's a good thing. She looked that up, and you can follow it. This is going to be a great thing. I'm telling you, it'll cut down on the bureaucrats from being able to hide things. So it shines that light on it, which is a wonderful thing. And that's what's been great about since we've been up there at the legislature. I've been there since 2008. I was elected. Gail had been elected earlier and then came back in 11. And so since we've been up there, that's what we've been hitting is the regulations, drawing those back, and even restructuring our taxes. And I believe that's why we're the fastest growing state. It's just pounding away right now. So a lot of it's coming up there in the Phoenix area. But if you've noticed, a lot's coming on the east side out here, right? It just seems to be booming out here. That's another issue that we plan to work on, is this freeway right here, where it goes to 4 lanes. So it cuts down right after I-19, right, Park area, and just goes to those 4 lanes. You're driving home on the 2 lanes at night, and what happens? You have that parking lot on the freeway. But the fast lane always seems to be free. I remember one night, this is about 2 years ago, I'm just driving home and listening to my music, and all of a sudden, I noticed out of a corner of my eye, this side was stopped, and it freaked me out because I didn't see it stopped until I was past it. And I'm still driving the speed limit, of course. And I look over, and it really jarred me, and I actually slowed up because it scared me enough to do that. And I realized they were backed up all the way onto the off ramp, all the way probably a quarter mile, where some of them actually had to go to the shoulder side all the way over, but plenty of them were still in the lane. So we recognize that, and it's harder for Phoenix to recognize that because they don't come this way mostly, and that's the truth. So remember this, we have we have 7 districts down here in the South. 2 are Republican districts, and the majority are Republicans up there. Majority of the Republicans come from Maricopa. So you only have 2 that can give the message up there on the Senate side. You have 4 that can give it on the House side. But guess what? One of the four in the North lives in Maricopa. So you really only have 3 in the House side that really can think about this. But then again, the other House member lives in Oro Valley, and the other senator lives in Saddlebrook. So how often do they drive this thing either? So that's your presence down here to tell them what happens. The good thing is you have pretty powerful chairman here. Natural resources, boom, that's pretty powerful, right, in the House. And if we bring this up in redress, then we get heard. So that's a good thing. So we're pretty strong for our southern region. So that's an issue that we're taking up there. I've already spoken with ADOT. I've spoken a little to PAG, not directly, but through their lobbyist. And now the next step will be talking to PAG and then trying to marry these guys up so we can fix this freeway strip right here, at least from Park to Sonoyta Highway. So those are the big things overall that I think will help in this industry, but help us in our southern region. 1663. So if you want to follow that. So think of this. It's 1663. Take the 1,000 off. It's actually bill number 663 from the Senate side, which is unusual to go over 500 in the Senate bills. So that's what's going on this year. So with that, appreciate you guys, and keep it up, because you either, as I say before, you either grow it or you mine it, right? And that's probably the education we need to get out there. Thank you, guys.
As Sydney so generously reminds me every time, first of all, Granite Construction, thank you very much for your hospitality. You all are amazing. They provide the beverages, and they provide this room and the equipment, which is a very significant value for us. Second of all, she told me I forgot introductions. So Leon, would you like to start with introductions, please?
Leon Pont, Copper State Bolton Nut, and then we go to board members.
Speak louder, please.
Jim Stone, retired from the safety industry, presently president of the Republican Club in Green Valley, Southern. Bill Beard, candidate for District 1 Board of Supervisors, and on a personal note, my great-grandfather came out here in the 1890s because he was a miner. I support mining.
Mr. Engineering and Mining Journal.
Cliff Vogel, Big Collie. Burns Factory Motor Parts.
Kathleen Wishnick, Green Valley Authority Chamber of Commerce, AC-19 Regional Tourism Alliance.
Brandon Martin, Congressional District 2 candidate.
Jim Davis, Argus and Associates.
Dave Marlowe, Greg Bar Electric.
Michael Koretz, Commercial Real Estate Group Tucson.
My name is Mario Castro, I'm the principal of FEMA Data.
Stacy Rich, also with FEMA JTEC. Even our assistant superintendent for FEMA JTEC.
Jeffrey Martin, Business Development Manager for Blue River Vacation, 4th generation miner in Arizona.
And I'm Kate Beer, and I'm a Republican Precinct Committee member. And a counselor here in the Tucson.
Robert Hernandez, Digital Visibility Marketing.
Chris Larson, Red Tech and Civic.
Steve Kaminsky, Western Technology,
Bruce Bond, member of Amigos, also Western Drilling, and Black Eye Arizona.
Newest Amigos member.
Ollie Bias with Gray Bar Electric.
Danielle Cowling, Gray Bar Electric Branch Manager.
Ray Fernberg, also with Gray Bar Electric.
Dave Rogers with Schneider Electric.
So should I change my name this time? Still Dave Marlowe, Gray Bar Electric.
Penny Pugh, Congressman Gosar's District Director in Intergovernmental Affairs.
I'm Hale Barter, I'm president of Montgomery Associates, we're a groundwork consulting firm here in Arizona. Chris Peters, hydrogeologist at Montgomery Associates, also the vice chair of the SME chapter here.
Bob Cummings, Saguaro Geoservices, geological and geotechnical engineer.
Shamala Cummings, Saguaro Geoservices.
Cecilia Green, Microfield Services, Safety and Human Resources, Mike. Shannon Swan, DSW Resources.
Ray Valenzuela, OBT Mining Solutions.
University of Arizona.
Mike Clark, Sumitomo Drive Technologies.
Nancy Concourse, Skyline Solution Laboratory.
Alberto Bennett, M3 Engineering.
Bob Metz, Professional Minerals Development.
Hi, Karen Mossbrook, Geochem, Environmental Investigation, Remediation, Solid Waste, and
Brent Alice, with Burns and Brown. Bill Davis, Burns and Brown.
Nancy Ross, New Market.
Steve Christie, member, Pima County Board of Supervisors, District 4, proud home of the Rosemont Copper Mine. I'm the only District 4 supervisor that has ever said that. I'm the only supervisor that can say that, and this supervisor will always support it.
Good afternoon. My name is Beth Borazon. I'm honored to serve you as Supervisor Christie's Chief of Staff, and I am the great-granddaughter and granddaughter of Copper Queen miners.
Matt Bingham with Hud Bay Rosemont Copper.
Hi, everybody. Mark Taylor of Westland Resources, also on the CAP board and also on the ballot for CAP this November. And remember, CAWCD when you get on the ballot. Thank you.
Pedro Contreras with Wolseley Industrial. Rick Shipman, Wolseley Industrial Ferguson Enterprises.
Representative Dale Griffin.
Senator David Howard, first generation legislator.
Chad Hauser, Granite Construction. And just wanted to, what Mr. Christian was saying, this timing couldn't be perfect. We don't have supporters in mining. Ask them if they're going to support the judge. What do we have about it? And how much money that brings into this community. So, can't have one but
Doug O'Neill with Rommel Construction.
James Stewart with Circle.
Robin Barnes, Sarko.
Hello, I'm Dan Dolan with Crest Insurance.
Christina Iena, Crest Insurance.
Diana Tolbert, Crest Insurance. Lori Swanson Design. I work on SABC with you.
Frank Cicero, South 32, retired city council member.
Joe Plummer.
Yvonne Marshall with South 32 Hermosa.
Bob Dickey, I'm the plant manager for Middle Valley Mine, Council Mining.
Tim Ralston, Land Permitting and Regulatory Affairs for Capstone Mining Corp. and also AMA board member.
Risha Ralston, Gold King United Methodist Church, his wife.
The boss.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so without further ado, Congressman Paul Gosar.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you, sir.
Well, first of all, to everybody, happy Valentine's Day and happy Statehood Day. What I'm going to do kind of as a format, we're going to have a conversation about what's going on, what are we playing with back in D.C. and in your backyard, and then kind of open it up for questions. And that's what I like. I like to have the inner discipline of being able to answer questions, what's on your mind. So let's look at what we're playing in. It's an unfair advantage to foreign powers like China. Now, why would I bring this up? Well, I mean, everybody talks about a global economy. Well, we ought to be looking at it from that standpoint. And the reason I say that is nobody does it better in mining, smeltering, than the United States. Without a doubt. Nobody's even close. But what's been happening to us is that we've seen the expansion of the Chinese state. The Chinese state is going around the world, And there's a program that they're using. It's called One Belt, One Road. Who's familiar with this? Very important. What they're doing is they're actually peddling infrastructure to impoverished nations in exchange for their resources. And what's happening is you're seeing the monopoly of particularly, you're seeing it right now with rare earths. The Chinese occupy pretty much almost 90% of the jurisdiction of those rare earths. Now, an unlikely person actually brought this to somebody's attention. The head of Tesla. Warning, you got a problem. And if you go back into the trade dispute between the administration and China, what was the one thing that China said? And they said it very quickly. We'll restrict your rare earths. Okay? So all the technology in the world, if you don't have rare earths, you're not going to get it. You're behind the cue ball. So that's what we're playing with. Now, tell me that they actually do mining better than us. Not at all. Look at the Congo for cobalt. They're using child labor. Seriously, child labor to mine cobalt. It's sick. The other thing that we've got ourselves into a problem with is that we have a generation who doesn't understand where all these nice things of technology come from. Okay? And so, and we also have to understand that they learn differently than we do. Okay? In our generation, if I had a white paper, I could give this to Greg and say, okay, here's my position on this. That didn't work in Washington, D.C. Why, would you say? Have you looked at who runs the offices of the members of Congress? Young people, 20 to 30 years of age. And how do they learn? They learn visually. So that's why we have to captivate them and reteach them, retool them. So now let's talk about where I'm coming from. I'm the ranking member on Energy and Mineral Resources, a subcommittee on natural resources. Okay? And I was the chairman prior to this when we were in the majority. And the ranking member, or the chairman right now of the whole committee is none other than Raul Grijalva. Okay, so now let me give you the dynamics here. Raul Grijalva is against every mine possible. I've given him the opportunity to tell me what mine he's for. He will never tell you anything about that. And it's become such a problem that we're using vices to actually stymie this development. Let me explain to you how far we've had to go. Who knows anything about in New Mexico, Chaco Canyon? Anybody know what's going on in Chaco Canyon? Well, it's a monument area that the New Mexico delegation wants to wall off. But not really. There's something behind it. So in this dispute is the Navajo Nation. When statehood came around, there was allotments that were actually purchased and given to the Native Americans in that area. There's well over 400 allotments. And in these allotments are contained minerals and oil and gas. Some of these allotments actually produce over $100,000 in royalties to Native Americans. So this piece of legislation went through on the floor, and I asked for one thing: a guarantee of easement from Chaco Canyon to these resources so that the Native Americans could get to them and increase their claim. They refused. That's why I held it up in the Senate. That's why I went to the Native Americans, to the Navajo Nation, with my chief of staff and my communications director, and had over 300 families participate in telling about their leaseholds, their allotments, and why the New Mexico delegation was against them. Now, why I'm giving you this viewpoint is to know what you're up against. It's a group that doesn't want any mining whatsoever. And so it's no longer defensive politics. We have to go on the offense. We have to go on the offense. So it's as simple as empowerment versus victimization. And so videos like this, I was very poignant with Rick a couple of years ago. We got to tell our story. We have to tell our story. We have to show them what things look like once a mine is done. I'll give you an example. So 3 years ago, I was contacted by a group in Minnesota. Now, why would I? I'm also the chairman of the Western Caucus. And the Western Caucus typically has been kind of a sleepy little caucus. They had about 30 members. Every once in a while, they do something. And when I got it, I thought, maybe we can do something different. One of my mottos is like Einstein says. And when we have a problem, it's not about thinking more. It's about thinking differently. So I went to the administration and I said, what would be the chances of you allowing us to have the secretaries and administrators of the different agencies to have one-on-ones with members of Congress? Their answer, go to it. So the first person we got was Ryan Zinke. First time he came, he had two staff members. Second time he came, he had 6. Third time he came with 12. Elaine Chow on transportation. First time she came, she had 6. Second time she came with 14. So here's thinking outside the box. What we realized in our time in Congress is that all these good ideas, or these ideas, are being stymied by the bureaucracy, particularly senior executive services. So things that are coming from Congress, working their way up, have been thwarted that way. Jurisdictions coming down from the secretaries have been thwarted as well. So we decided, why not dialogue directly with them? And what you're starting to see is the rules and regulatory state are changing dramatically. You wonder why it is? I'll let you in on it. It's that dialogue with the secretaries and administrators, with members of Congress, and allowing them to get wins back home. Streamlining the process, whether it be NEPA, whether it be flexibility on Fish and Wildlife Services, it doesn't matter. This little group has grown to almost 80 individuals. We also take them around the country. So it was easier to go overseas to study a country than it was to come into our own country and understand what is so valuable about our back door. We bridged that with the ethics department of the administration, and we were allowed to start those concepts. We've gone to Alaska, California, Nevada, Colorado, Arizona, Montana, Idaho, Minnesota, and Alaska. And when you see it from the ground level, from your perspective, what you have to deal with, what your solutions are and ideas are, it makes sense. It imprints. So we take members of Congress and their senior staff. It's been an unbelievable success. In fact, this year we're going to be going up to Washington State to look at both agriculture, mining, and water and power. Pretty interesting, because it's right on our doorstep too. Taking down these dams are the same thing as what's happening up in Washington State. You already have proposals now to take down Marble Canyon and Hoover Dam on Lake Mead. It's already here, folks. Here it is. So we've got to be on the offense. We can also play defense. And so that's why I like speaking to groups like yourselves. So in the committee, we're under assault. I'll give you how much of an assault. Just this week, the other side made a move to have unilateral subpoena power by the chairman of the committee. By the way, it included individual citizens. Okay, so our thought was we met as a caucus and said, what are we going to do? So the strategy came up with is that somebody would offer an amendment saying we were going to remove private citizens. And when you hear this, it's got a unique Arizona flavor. So when they rejected that, we were going to put something on the table, and that was my idea. Okay? So, of course, Rob Bishop, through Mike Johnson of Louisiana, made the motion to remove the subpoena power over individual citizens. Of course, they rejected it. It was voted down. I offered an amendment then that individuals called before the committee now are eligible under the EJA premise, equal access under justice. Now, here's why it's very important. EJA was actually a bill that Arizona Senator DeConcini actually got passed. It was for an individual, particularly a veteran, who had to assail the federal government for their benefits which were promised to them. They don't have the resources that the federal government has, so the federal government gives them those resources. So when you see people like General Flynn, who's being bankrupt by the process, we can't have that anymore. Interestingly enough, it passed unanimously. That's called smart strategy. That's the first big break we've had with EJA in 20-some years. It went across the hallways into the Senate saying, oh my God, it's amazing what they just got in the House Resources Committee. Those protections, because that's what's coming. The chairman is going to be calling people right and left to make sure that they're going to push this movement of no mining. No mining whatsoever. So now we got to be smart about where do we go with this. We're all in this together, whether it's from Minnesota to Arizona to Washington State to Montana to Wyoming. We're in all of this together. So we're starting to also start trying to build precedents. I just showed you a precedent. Here's another one. NEPA reviews. This administration is the first time that they're trying to streamline the NEPA review, giving timetables where the government has to respond. And if they don't respond, then it moves forward. So putting the onus on government. The second part is making those that serve us accountable. Now let's go back. If we make a mistake in the private sector, we're held accountable, right? So how is it that the federal government is not? So one of the first things that we did with this new administration in the first year was identify individuals that were problematic. The first one we went after was the regional head of Fish and Wildlife Services, Dr. Gosar. Why in the heck would you do that? Well, along the way, in 2015, we had a Fish and Wildlife Service director who violated the law. What he did is on a day before Memorial Day over in Lake Havasu, anybody knows that that's their biggest day of the year, they decided to quarantine or wall off part of the lake for use. And this is a use where families and children, actually, they're out of the mainstream, the fast-moving boats, to learn to water ski and enjoy the water. Totally in violation of the law. So we went apoplectic. Me and the mayor from Lake Havasu pushed and pushed and pushed. They weren't even going to have a hearing in Lake Havasu. Well, we got it. Then they were going to have it in a hotel for 50 people. I'm like, no. Much bigger. Oh, no one will come. So we forced our hand. We actually had it at the Aquatic Center, which is bigger than a gymnasium. By the way, over 1,100 people showed up. Most of them from California, by the way. They tried to issue their propaganda, and they were shouted down. The Fish and Wildlife Service Regional Director came to me and said, Dr. Gosar, we just can't reverse this overnight. I said, what the hell? Yes, you did it overnight. You can rescind it overnight. But that wasn't good enough. So when we went to the secretary, we said, somebody's got to pay the fine. Now, you just can't fire a federal worker. So one of the things you can do is you can reassign them. So if you go back to Ryan Zinke's first administrative action, was to reassign 50 senior executive service members to different areas. You can ask him today who the number one person was put on that list and who did it. He will tell you, I had to get Gosar off my back. He does not leave anything alone. That's accountability. Now, I'm not done with Mr. Tuggle. He was reassigned to a job. He chose to take something else. And the reason being is they need to understand that when they are working for the federal government, they work for us. They work for us. Look, if you doubt me, look at the VA. That's where we've actually had to pass a law by Congress to actually hold people accountable. And people have been fired. Over 1,000 people have been fired by the misuse of our veterans. So we got to think outside the box here now. Make sure people are accountable. Go on the offense, still play defense, but also promote. We got to promote. Penny, were you able to get that video? Okay. So let's go back to that group from Minnesota. So they came to me and they said, you know, Dr. Gosar, we need your help. As the previous administration was walking out the door, literally leaving the White House, they withdrew over 425,000 acres that Congress had established. Congress had established and renewed twice over. And what's important about this is it's the boundary waters. So you have the boundary waters that was taken off, and the only time they've used a buffer area in between that and an area that they were actually going to mine and log. And then the Superior National Forest where they were mining and logging. And so I said, okay, we're going to flip my schedule, and in 2 weeks we're coming up there. They're like, oh my God, what do you need? I said, I need a film crew. Not for me, for you. You're going to tell your story, and I want it provocative. So what you're going to see here is their attempt. Now, I'll tell you some of the things I would have changed. But I want to show you what, were you able to find it? Okay, let me know when he finds it. This is them speaking. Now, one of the things I want to tell you about is when I went up there, there were 3 members of Congress, actually 4 members of Congress. Our town halls were filled. And by the way, not with Republicans, with Democrats and Democratic Labor Party members. These were school teachers. These were supervisors. These were miners, the union miners. Everybody was here on trying to keep these open. They did a fabulous job. And we were able to reverse that. The president actually renounced it in an executive action because an executive action was taken by the previous administration. But once again, we're back on the defense because, wouldn't you know, the opposition to mining brought it to the floor to remove this again. Okay? So, you find it yet? Okay. No. Oh, you can plug that in and show it to where it is, Penny. Just show him where it is. Okay. But this administration has been trying to work and streamline that process. And right now, this industry is hanging by a thread. We lose things like Rosemont. We lose things like South 32. We lose Twin Metals and Molycorp in Minnesota. We're done. Yeah, we're done. Oh, here it is, yeah. So watch this. This is their attempt, and then I'll tell you what I would have done a little differently. Okay?
My brother and I started the business, and we opened up in April of 1964. When we opened, there were 2 mines operating inside the city limits of Ely. Since they closed, the town has been declining.
I graduated from Ely in '67 with 158 students. We have like 32 in the graduating class this year.
The whole area was born with mining and logging. Tourism came later. And for many, many years, mining, logging, and tourism got along very well together.
So if you can imagine, at some point in history, going back into the early 1900s, that this had trucks and trains and crushers building America. We're just asking for people to take a look around and understand the before and after of what mining is. And now that we have this beauty, this is our drinking water here in Aurora, Minnesota. And we have some of the best water in the country.
We're not just fighting for copper nickel mining, we're fighting for all mining.
This withdrawal affects a swath of our region that is actually desirable mining area and possesses one of the richest mineral resources we have in the nation, if not the world. The proposed mineral withdrawal would be the death sentence for our community. We need something to survive on. Mining offers us that future.
You people that don't believe in copper nickel mining, we're passing bags around. Throw your car keys, your cell phones, your iPads, your iPhones in the bag because they're all full of copper and nickel. Well, I'm here today, sadly, to say that Andrea had to bring his bag from Babbitt because the Zook store in Aurora had to close. You're not only starving us, figuratively speaking, you're starving the people of the Iron Range, literally speaking.
In this region, tourism is like a dessert. It looks good, it smells good, and it tastes good, but you can't live on it. Mining in northeast Minnesota, that's the meat and potatoes. That is what supports our families.
The withdrawal proposal risks the future of jobs for my members. This withdrawal would represent a loss of $1.5 billion in annual wages and more than $2.5 billion in annual economic production based on studies conducted by the University of Minnesota Duluth.
We have been mining for 130 years. We have the cleanest water, the cleanest air in the state. This is not an industry that destroys things, it's an industry that builds things. And that's what America has been all about.
We're being denied the American dream in these small communities. Rural Minnesota is eroding right before our eyes. We're not asking to circumvent any process. We're asking the ability to go through a process. We're asking for us to have a chance to meet the standards, both state and federal, and allow our families to go to work.
Don't take those lands away or you're going to lose our town, and that's devastating to us.
So there's their response. And it worked very, very well. So as chairman, I basically told them it had to be under 5 minutes. So I started my comments by saying, okay, we're going to talk about this. And I started to go down the road and I said, why am I talking about it? Let's turn your attention to the monitor and watch it from the people back in Ely. Now, I would have done something a little bit different. But and Penny can tell you, they have to reel me in. So I want to get somebody's attention. So at the very beginning of this one, what I would have done is I'd have gone, with big X's across there. And that noise. Warning, warning, the pictures you're about ready to see are very disturbing. Warning, warning, the pictures you're about ready to see are disturbing. And then you see that reclaimed lake. And you find out it has the cleanest water in Minnesota, including the boundary waters. No one knew that. That's the story we got to tell. And so I'm so glad that Rick has done a number of videos. Fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. Because that's how we get the younger folks' attention. It's not if, it's we have to make this work. We have to make this work. So we're all in this together. Last but not least, we also have to show what it looks like when we're getting done. That's why this was so powerful. So we reached out to the Gold Rush, the series on television. And my chief of staff is from Alaska. So he reached out to him and said, listen, could you actually do a couple shows on your remediation? All you show is digging. You don't show what it looks like after you leave. Because, once again, the other side is showing everybody something that doesn't exist anymore. Just last week, the former chief of the Forest Service brought to our attention that acid mining is a problem. And the 13 sites that he cited, the most recent one was 1964. That's how the message has been so strayed. Now, we have a golden opportunity to do this. Anybody heard of the Green New Deal? Well, you can't have the Green New Deal without mining. You flat can't have it. Think of the components within the windmills and the turbines. Think about the solar cells. Think about the batteries. Oh yeah, about the batteries. This is something we ought to be bullish upon. If you're going to have new technology, you got to have mining. The senator and representative said it. If you don't grow it, you mine it. And these are great jobs. You think I'm going to hurt my environment when I have to live in that environment? Think again. So our challenges is that we're against a legislative state, a restrictive state. And the federal government's power over us, particularly on federal lands, has to be streamlined. That's like having the Forest Service coming in, having the BLM coming in. All of these we're trying to set an exemption. Play smarter, not harder. So once you get an exemption in one area, by God, we get it everywhere else. So let me give you one more example, and then we'll open up to questions. So we had a lands package last year. And I was the only member of Congress to have 5 pieces of land in that discussion. Only one. And even the president acknowledged it. He's like, hey, you're one of those freedom dudes. And you are the only one that had 5 pieces of legislation in there. Well, one of those pieces of legislation was the purchase by La Paz County, one of our poorest counties, of almost 6,000 acres. So it was a feat just getting that. But what was even better was that they had to do an EIS. So we worked very closely, and they worked very closely with the BLM. By that way, an EIS, which normally takes 4.5 years, over 600 pages, was done in 45 days, and the BLM paid for it. Here's my point. We got to start thinking outside the box. Where we can get an exemption, we use it, and we expand upon it. We got to have a strategy. We just can't have just off into no man's land. We have to have a strategy of where we're at, what are the obstacles, and how do we get around them, and where do we get to our goal. We got to be unified on that. I will tell you, I'm a believer in the solutions coming from Arizona. Now think about it. This is a state that was denied its statehood because it believed in the recall of federal judges. Folks, we're ahead of our time. If not us, who? And if not now, when? This is an opportunity of a lifetime. I'm a believer that it's always the best chance for change when the light is darkest. It's just going to have to take some different kind of thinking. Once again, Einstein. It's not more thinking, it's thinking differently. And I think all of you have a part to play in that. I don't want to be following China around. I want to lead our nation to the forefront. I'm tired of apologizing. I want to be that beacon on that hill. And it's all about technology, that ingenuity. And this is a great time to be able to do it. So with that, I'm going to stop talking, and I would happily take any questions you'd like to give me. Thank you. And as you ask the question, tell me who you are again.
Yeah, Bob Cummings with Swath Geoservices.
Thank you.
I think it's a great argument and well made that minerals is essential for the lifestyle that we all embrace. But part of all of this argument, what I think is missing, is that the opposition gains a lot of traction from this notion that were the mining industry left to its own devices, it would not embrace the broader public interest. That the only reason these environmental achievements have occurred is because of opposition and forcing those kinds of things to be done by the industry. Now, the industry has changed, as you pointed out. But I don't think that those people who might be sitting on the fence would necessarily trust the industry to continue to embrace those kinds of environmental awareness objectives, were it not for the continuing vigilance of the opposition. I think what's necessary is for the industry to demonstrate that it's aware of these things and values these other goals and objectives just as much as they do profitability and the well-being of their shareholders.
Without a doubt. So let's go through that argument, because the first thing that says out of the other side when we bring this up is these companies are all multinational. Do you know why they're all multinational? Anybody want to answer that question for me? Because if you're truly just an American company, you can't afford to have all your holdings within the United States. 4.5, 6 years for NEPA reviews, plus any injunction by the last letter with a stamp on it on the 23rd hour, 59th minute. The litigation aspects. Oh, absolutely. And I'm one of those people that will take this on. I mean, dial it up. Dial up our committee. Facts are the facts. Resolution Copper. I'm the gentleman that actually got that through. Resolution Copper comes every time to me. What can we do for you? My comment has been, follow the letter of the law and show people. Make them walk a mile in your moccasins. Show them what you're doing. That you spent $1.3 billion in cleanup of the mine previous. Make them come see, touch it, and feel it. And tell them, what are we doing wrong? What's it going to take for you to get to yes? That's the problem with the other side. There's no way to get them to yes. And if that's the case, it's our way or their way. Choose. I am not a victim. I refuse to be a victim. This is about empowerment. Our future is all about empowerment. That was what our country was based upon. Greg, what have I asked for? I've always asked for transparency to show and walk people through. I want no shortcuts. I want to be treated fairly. And I think that's the biggest key, is that when you show people, right there, did you notice the map that was red, yellow, and green? Do you remember that? Okay, let me tell you about that map. I actually had to run the floor on the U.S. House when that bill was brought up. And the opposition, I knew where they were going. So I had my staff build that map. Red being the boundary waters, yellow being the buffer area, and the green being the Superior National Forest that was open to logging and mining. So I made my pitch. I sat down. The other side went and showed all these pictures. Oh, these are the boundary waters. So when it came to my turn, I kept going, what they're doing is they're misleading you. That's in the red area. That's no play. The yellow's no play. The green is the play zone. The only monument in U.S. history to have this. Over and over again, I kept going to this. That same map. Saying we're wanting no bypassing environmental rules. We just want to have the chance. So we got done with our discussion. I went to my office, and when they called votes later that day, I thought, I got to go down, I might have to twist some arms. So I run up on Dave Bratt and Bill Pascal. Now, Dave Bratt's a Republican. Bill Pascal's from New Jersey. He's a Democrat. And he sees me running up, so Dave Bratt goes, God, what are you going to do, Gosar? Get me to sign on to another mining bill? That's what kind of promoter you have here, okay? And I said, no, Dave, you're already on this bill. Well, Bill Pascal looks at me and he goes, you know, guys, I was watching the floor today. Were you guys watching the floor today? There was this guy, and he had this map, and it was red, yellow, and green. And all our arguments he put down in this map saying, nope, that's not what we're talking about. You're talking about the boundary waters. Those are off limits. This buffer area is off limits, but this green area was for go. It was a stoplight. I'm voting for that guy. Dave Bratt looked at me and goes, oh my God, you got to vote because of a red, yellow, and green map? That's the whole point. It was factually based. The other thing is you saw those lakes, the cleanest water. Cities, counties in the state line up to get that water. We're not bypassing anything. We're actually making it better than we find it. So I think it's just the way we portray it. I refuse to have that. I mean, let's take the worst of the worst scenario. Let's take uranium. Seriously, let's take uranium up on the Navajo Nation. We're not going to get remediation unless we leave that open. Now think about this. My whole discussion, and once again, I had to lead the charge again this year. What was my picture? I showed him the geological formations. And I would be amiss if I didn't tell you. My dad is a geologist. When I was a kid, I used to hate rocks. I love rocks. They set you free. Seriously, they tell the story, they set you free. So when you look at the anatomy of a breccia pipe, you wonder why the springs have some contamination of radioactive isotopes in it. Why? Because the whole drainage is facilitated upon that collapsed breccia pipe. Water it takes the solubility and brings it down through there. So wouldn't it be better to actually mine those sites, taking out that and putting clean rock in there? You get two benefits. No more uranium in the water. Number two is you get better saturation to your subsurface reservoirs, which are all your caliche clays. Whoa! How do you dispute that one? And then let's go back at the federal government. Who's familiar with the Bennett Freeze area? Do you know what that is? It was an arbitrary line by the Secretary of Interior that said, under this line, you can't do anything. If you live there, you can't replace a door, a window. If there was a tailings pile, couldn't touch it. That was rescinded in 2010. 2010. Now, if we're not going to mine that, and those breccia pipes are 6 times the concentration, or most concentrated uranium supplies, the only mill that's milling uranium right now is in Utah. Once it's gone, it's gone. It's gone. It ain't coming back. I can tell you this. We've been trying to deal with the forest, management of our forests. You had lawsuits in 1972, 73, 74, 75, 76, 78, 81, 83, 84, 85, all by Centers for Biological Diversity. Oh, we didn't take out the logging industry. The hell you didn't. The hell you didn't. We've been struggling to have that infrastructure come back. We have 2 mills right now, one in Heber and one on the White Mountain Apache. Isn't it interesting that we're actually facilitating Russia, the Soviet bloc countries, now to have a monopoly on uranium? Anybody remember Uranium One? Oh boy. And so our energy portfolio is going to be dictated by China? On the Green New Deal, I'm all about this. We'd be better off doing it here and having everybody else buy it from us, because the biggest changes in greenhouse gases we're doing. Not by being demanded of, it's because of the technology. It's in our bloodstream about the way we want to do things better. The facts will set you free, just like rocks will. Did I answer your question?
No, could you be more thorough?
Well, I'm happy to introduce it. If you come to my office in D.C., I have a shadow box with all sorts of mining stuff. And I always point to people saying, listen, climate's always changed. That's why you find a fossilized fish in Green River, Wyoming. Does man have a part of it? Sure he does. But is it all what it is? No. Because once again, you point back to areas in geology. Man wasn't around. Then all of a sudden we saw this elliptical orbit of greenhouse gases. And we saw die-offs of lots of species. Man wasn't part of it. And now I'll tell you something you probably don't want to know. Late at night, when I get back out of the gym, I watch NASA. It's really interesting what you learn from NASA. They're now talking about a 12-year cycle for the sun. And they can configure things that actually change because of the dynamics of solar flares and stuff. It's really interesting to follow that up. Should we be good about our environment? Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're better because of it. But the United States has always led the way. Always led the way. I saw a gentleman in the back. And your name?
You hit on a couple of them. You talked about the logging industry, right?
Yeah.
The West, how many wildfires, how terrible is the regulations we've had. What's interesting, if you pull on Google Earth and you look at Native American land and forest, you don't see fires. Wall breaks, it stops because they manage their forest. Why are we able to have our Native American, they're not restricted to manage their forest? We have our government entities and we can't even manage our forest. Why aren't the states allowed to manage our own forests?
Well, it's a great point. We've actually been told that we have to give that jurisdiction to them. So we've been working with the Farm Bill. I'm one of them, the Good Neighbor Policy. I'm responsible for the dead beetle kill. That kind of opportunity was my bill as well, giving them that opportunity. But part of the problem is we've put the framework out of business. So once again, science sets you free. So who knew that these crowded forests actually benefited the barred owl over the spotted owl? This is where we have to start challenging the endangered species aspect. What if I told you that a couple of years back, the Fish and Wildlife Service was removed from its jurisdiction of this Mexican gray wolf? You know why? They were dying off. They had no plan. And the court judge said, it's better for New Mexico and Arizona to do it because it's an utter failure by the Fish and Wildlife Service. Listen to these numbers. Okay, the whole context of the endangered species was to take threatened and endangered species and get them recoverable, get them delisted. Here's the numbers. If I took 100 of you and put you in the hospital and only 3 of you survive, that sucks. Those aren't good numbers. It might be for the 3, but it's not for the 97. Those are the numbers for species. To me, that's not success. They're not delisted. We're just facilitating this group of entities that are being used as pawns. And why would I say that? Well, when we're sued by sue and settle on these endangered species, these environmental groups, they don't put the money towards the recovery of that species. It goes in their pocket. And when they were told that they could charge no more than $185 an hour, we figured a way to charge whatever we wanted to, saying you got to be a specialist in water or a specialist in air. Well, I like my critters too. I'm a pretty diversified person. I want my critters, and there's a better way to do it. We should be using private sector, public sector, and our government to be all involved. And it ought to be about science. That's what it ought to be. But that's where we got wrong. So how is it in Arizona that we can't manage our forests around known habitat for spotted owls? So last year, I took the Western Caucus to Lake Tahoe. How is it that California is actually doing it in real time? I had to bring that up to the Forest Service here, saying, how come California's doing it and you're not doing it? If there's anybody that would be adhering to the science, it would be California. So include me. Allow us to do that, to manage that aspect. But let's get the science to that. The other thing is that when we're talking about this new initiative that's coming from my side of the aisle, the Trillion Trees Initiative, that's great, but it doesn't help us unless we actually manage our forests. So we have to go back to basic science. Plants are filters. They're the lungs and the kidneys of our world. They need dirty water. They need dirty air. Think about this. They need dirty water and dirty air to survive. What happens in catastrophic fires? All those heavy metals that are encrusted in our surface are filtered into the products of the wood. So when you have this catastrophic fire, what happens? They explode. They explode. It's the most polluting process other than volcanics. Not only that, but the fire that is necessary is now a hotter fire that actually incinerates the earth, sterilizing it. So if there's one thing we ought to be doing is we ought to be enabling that forest. It's got to be a dynamic forest. What the hell is he talking about? Well, you have to have young growth trees and medium growth trees, not just standing old growth trees. By the way, the last time I was taught, old growth trees produce more carbon debt than they do oxygen. It's the young and medium growth trees that actually spawn more of the oxygen surplus that we find. So it's a very simple process. We have to have dynamics, and we've lost that dynamics. I tell you what, there's opportunity that abounds here. I want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. It's not about no, it's about what's it going to take to be yes. How do I include you? How do you want to be part of the solution instead of the problem?
One last one. So I'm a root cause guy, right? That's my job to figure out what happened. So a root cause is we have a generation. Now it's overlapping, especially with Arizona, native Arizona. I've seen where I spend a lot of my time discussing with people about mining, about our culture, right? And what you see is automatically the wall is up, so you gotta find a way to get to that wall. So somewhere amongst our country and our generations, right, we gotta educate people, right? That's not always factual, right? They see what they see, they read the news but they don't ever get the facts, right? We don't have time, we're too busy, we're in a hurry, we don't have this, hey Joe, look, this was going on. Oh, it just spreads like wildfire. The bad spreads fast, the good doesn't spread so fast.
Well, that goes back to the question why I said, why do you want to go videos? We can't mandate the younger generations, the millennials, the Gen Zs, to actually come to us. We got to go to them. And what you got to do is you got a minute. When they're doing this, you got a minute. Now let me give you an example. So in the impeachment process, I knew I wasn't going to bring it up, but I got to tell you about this story, okay? Who knows what an acronics is? Anybody know what an acronics is? Acronics? It's a hidden message that you're hiding in a number of your tweets. And we made an application. So what we wanted to do, the acronics that we were going to use, or that meme, was Epstein didn't kill himself. Okay, that was a secret message. So we had to have 23 tweets. I got to tell you this because it was the most fun our office has ever had. Everybody was involved. Everybody was involved trying to think this thing out, okay? So what we did is to show people that what we were doing, we said, I did 5, we had an area. We did 5 really good 5 good tweets, 1 exceptional. What an area. It showed them that we were actually doing an acronics to look for it. Area 51. Who knew? That's what it takes to get on Tucker Carlson. Who knew? Okay? But anyway, so we put this acronics out. A good hit is 10,000, 100,000 hits. We had 33 million hits. 33 million hits. This is how good the hit was. My chief of staff and I are in a cab, and we're talking back and forth, and we're laughing. We're like, oh my God, who would have believed that just that acronics, a simple little message, would have got that kind of attention? The cabbie turns around and goes, are you the guys who did that acronics? That Epstein didn't kill himself? And we're like, yeah. And he goes, how rad is that? 23 years old. Okay, so Republicans are not known for having a good vice with young kids. Oh, well, I had bloggers defending me. Here's one of them. One of the top bloggers was like, how cool is it that a Republican congressman is using an acronics to get us? I wasn't even paying attention to the impeachment inquiry. I never knew what was going on. Now I do. A stupid acronics. Everybody's waiting for the next one I'm going to drop. And here's the deal. We got 10,000 new visitors that follow me nationwide now. So it's not about thinking more, it's think differently. You take these videos, and Starbucks showed us this. This is how this works. So what they did is they mandated that if you were in our hotspot a while back, you actually had to watch these videos to get credit. And what they started finding out is the kids, you couldn't use them for multiple credit. You watch a video, you could only do it for once. But they noticed the kids were going back and re-examining these videos over and over again on their own. They wanted to learn. So it's interesting that when you do it with the video, you captivate them. Think outside the box. If you're going to build a video, if you got a great idea, run it by your teenager. If your teenager loves it, put it out. You know, what I was going to tell Rick was, he's got another video. Can you pull that one up with all the technology at the front? Showing all the technology? So I love these videos, but I'm going to put something out there for you and see if you think that your kids would like it a little differently. So just watch this, and then I'll make an idea. Right here's where I would stop. Keep going. Keep going. Now, remember you saw all this technology. What if you stopped it right there and went, "Urch!" You heard the brakes hit, and you reeled it all the way back. Who knows Makembe Mutombo? No, no, no. Remember that? So all of a sudden, what you have is Makembe Mutombo come on and go, no, no, no. Can't do without mining. Why did I say that? Is because he's a recognizable person. Kids gravitate to that. All of a sudden they're like, what's he saying again? What did he do? Think through their eyes. Include them in that. We can win the day. Remember, again, who runs our government. They're 20 to 30-year-olds. I'm not kidding you. Go look at everybody's staff. They're 20 to 30-year-olds. So I think there's a golden opportunity here for us. We can make this thing happen. Sydney.
Representative Griffin has something
Oh,
to
no.
I just wanted to thank you for all you did, and you've encouraged us at the state level. The bill that I was talking about, pro-mining resolution, recognizing the importance of hard rock mining industry to Arizona's economic well-being. That passed out of the House and is over to the Senate, and that's HCR 2014. The other one that's going to be in committee Tuesday, in my committee Tuesday, is HCR 2022. And it's opposing energy and land use restrictions from August move. So thank you for providing that information to us at the state level. I think we work very well together. It wouldn't happen without you.
Thank you, Gail. I appreciate it. I know the time is getting short, but I also want to share one thing with you. People look at our federal ground as a problem. I look at it as a benefit. Now, remember the stewardship of those federal lands was for multiple use. Remember the video I showed you on Minnesota? The gentleman he said, you know, having these tourist jobs is great, but it's like the dessert. It doesn't pay the bills. Think about the power that mining has. Average mine worker, it's big. It's a big number. They get benefits as well. It's kind of money that they buy houses, they buy cars, they invest in their communities. When you're talking about tourism, it very, very rarely pays the bills. You see, some people come in and then they leave. We can have it both. We can have it all together. That was what the concept was of multiple use. The other thing they said in that thing that is very poignant is, we have a lot of federal land. We don't have the money to pay for our schools. That was part of the deal, was the use of those public entities for money to pay for our schools. So let me tell you, I'm not the only one thinking this out. There's somebody else that thought this out. I'm going to leave you with this. Instead of recreating the wheel, follow the wheel. One of the most accomplished members in Congress is a guy that you're going to go, what? He's actually citing Harry Reid? Oh, yeah. Senator Harry Reid got so many things done, and I'm going to share one with you. Anybody familiar with SNFLMA? Southern Nevada Land Exchange? Okay. Well, Harry had a problem with the city of Las Vegas. He couldn't grow the city of Las Vegas because it was surrounded by BLM. So he had to figure out a way to get that undone. So Harry goes back into the bills and laws and finds out that there's a law that requires the federal government to inventory their land every year, and the lands that they cannot use or have future use for, they got to put them up for auction. Did you know about that? It's there. Okay, I can assure you it's there. Okay? And those proceeds at the time were split 50-50. When that land was sold, 50% went to the federal treasury and 50% went to the state of jurisdiction. Now it's 52-48 because of the Ryan Murray deal. Feds get 52, we only get 48. Not a good deal. Didn't vote for it. Okay, for that reason alone. So all of a sudden, you realize in the last decade, Harry Reid's responsible for bringing $4 billion to the state of Nevada. Representative Senator, could you use $4 billion? Interesting. So no longer is Las Vegas landlocked now. Pretty interesting. Followed the law, did a pilot project. Smart. Said, listen, let's try it in southern Nevada. Well, if it's good enough for Harry, it's good enough for us. So what we've been doing is we've been going to all the counties and cities in our district and saying, listen, if you can find a piece of Forest Service land that's in your jurisdiction or your city or your county that you could utilize for economic development, tell us where it is. If it's good enough for Harry, it's good enough for us. That's called the Herd Act. Well, Harry, when he got that 50% coming back to the state of Nevada, he was smart. He got all the opposition out of the way. Most of that money, that 50% that came to the state, went through K through 12 education. A part of it went to conservation and part of it went to infrastructure. We're a little bit more elaborate. We say 15% goes to K through 12 education, 15% goes to secondary education like U of A. It's a carrot school. Its prospectus is to get some of those royalties off of public lands. 10% was to conservation and 10% was an infrastructure project. 10% of $4 billion. Sounds like a pretty nice chunk of change for infrastructure, doesn't it? Interesting. It's called the Herd Act. So you might want to follow that. You guys built it. Folks, there's so many opportunities here, and you hold all the keys. You really do. Make government be accountable to you. Do not play second fiddle. You have all the answers. The facts are on our side. If you don't grow it, you got to mine it. We're as environmentally sensitive and pragmatic as anybody else. You just got to show it. Thanks. Sir, you can't go away without one of these. My sleep wardrobe.
Oh, yeah. Well, I realized a lot of people had to get back to work. Sydney, you got any?
I think we're running out of time.
Running out of time? Oh, no, they canceled their meeting.
Oh, okay, I thought they needed that.
They did, and then I just found out earlier they canceled it, so we're good. But do you want to say anything?
Just next week in Phoenix, is the big SME Mine Expo. If you're displaying and have an exhibit and you haven't told me where it is, please let me know. I want to let all 3,000 individuals on the Amigos database know where you are to find you. If you one of the Amigos logo sign that identifies you as an Amigo, let me know. I'll make sure you have one for your display. And if you're having an ancillary event, some kind of a reception or whatever, and you want to invite all 3,000 people on the Amigos database, I will be happy to invite them for you. That's it. Next week, Phoenix.
Okay, stay tuned. We're going to be sending out new videos next week with another request for funding for this year for the Miracle Match of Doubling Up by Bill Ostenbacher. You all have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you later. Thank you.